Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Thank you very much for coming and joining us for the learning of Torah Hashem Be'ezras Hashem Yisbarach. As we start with tremendous appreciation to TorahAnytime.com for providing us a platform in 187 countries. We thank Kol HaLashon for giving us their global reach, and we also thank Torah Communications Network for carrying the share, and the other places where we have the share carried, such as YouTube, Facebook. We welcome our Zoomers and those that are here in our flagship station at Agudas Yisroel Bezev of Lakewood, and also we welcome in our digital subscribers as well. Tonight's share is dedicated by three wonderful Talmidim. The share is dedicated by Mark Frankel and his family. In honor of the share, Mark just wants to say how much he misses not being able to join us live, and how he appreciates our Zoom family and looks forward to rejoining us. Tonight's shir is dedicated by the Klein and Jaffe families, Lili Nishmas Osher Anshel Ben Yehuda, on his yahrzeit. His neshama should have an aliyah, he should be a Mel's Yosher, for his family, for all of us and all of Klal Yisroel. And tonight's shir is dedicated by my dear Talmud Beirach Goldwasser and family, Le'ilu Nishmas Moshe Ben Gershon HaKoyen. Neshama should have an aliyah, he should have a lichtig Gan Eden, and be a Melitz Yosher for his family, for all of us, and all of Klal Yisrael. Ani Chaysencha Yisrael. Now, I'm teaching Chumash for 42 years, B'Rabbim, Baruch Hashem, hopefully till the Mashiach. And this is a Ramami Panu that I was never aware of. There's a lot of things I'm not aware of. But the Bayis Neman, I told you that I got this new sefer from a great Sephardic Gaon, and I told you I'll be quoting from him a lot this year. So he says that Ani Chaysencha Yisrael, I, your father-in-law Yisrael, is Rosh Tevis Ochi. Ani Chaysencha Yisrael, Ani is Aleph, Chaysencha is Ches, and Yisro is Yud, so it's Rosh Tevis Ochi, my brother. So why is he addressing Moshe Rabbeinu as his brother? So he says the Maril cites the holy Ramah Mipanu, that he says that just like Moshe Rabbeinu was a Gilgal of Hevel, this is well known, that Moshe Rabbeinu was a Gilgal of Noach, and Noach was a Gilgal of Hevel. This is well known. But just like Moshe was a Gilgal of Hevel, Yisro was a Gilgal of Cain. This I was not aware of. And that's why you have the Rosh Tevis of Ochi. Because in the previous reincarnation, Moshe and Yisro were brothers. Now, so of course it clicked by me right away. We know that the purpose of a Gilgal is to be mesaking, to correct what was lacking in the previous Gilgal. So like many times we explained, Moshe Rabbeinu was a Gilgal of Noach. Noach, who was Ish Tzadik Tamim, but there was a tain on him that he didn't do enough for the people of his generation. Hashem said, you offered me karbanis afterwards. You should have offered me the karbanis before. Right? You should have done something before. So what did Moshe Rabbeinu do to be mesak in that? He went so far in protection of his people that he said, save them, if not, mecheni no mesifracha, wipe me out of your sefer. Mecheni no, says the Chidah, one of the authors of the Chok, mecheni no is the exact letters of Minoyach Ani. Necheni is the same letters of Minoyach Ani. So that's how Moshe Rabbeinu was misaking his Gilgal of Noach. Now, what was Cain? Well, we know Cain killed Hevel. So here, Yisro, as the Gilgal of Cain, would save Moshe Rabbeinu to be misaken. And we know how he saved Moshe Rabbeinu. Remember the story in the Tanchuma that Moshe Rabbeinu, when he was raised in the palace of Paro, Paro had Moshe Rabbeinu on his lap, and playfully Moshe Rabbeinu took Paro's crown and put it on his head. He was less than 3 years old, but he took the crown and put it on Paro's head. And Bilam was there, and he saw it, and he said, "That's the one. Kill him. Kill him right now. He's going to take away your throne." So Yisro was there, and he said, "Nah, it's just Kinderspiel. He's just a child." Bilam said, No, it's a bad omen. Kill him." So Yisro said, "I'll prove it to you." He took a bowl of glowing coals, and he took a bowl of dull gold. And he said, "I'll put it in front of him, and let's see which one he takes. If he's taka mature, he'll take the gold. If he's just a kid, he'll take the coals." Now Moshe Rabbeinu was going to take the gold, but a malach came, hit his hand, and he took the coals and he burnt it. He put his hand in his mouth to cool it off, and that's how he became a stutterer. So Yisro went ahead and saved Moshe Rabbeinu. And because Yisro saved Moshe Rabbeinu, remember Moshe was a Gilgal of Hevel, and Yisro was a Gilgal of Cain, he was misaken that which Cain killed Hevel. See how everything comes together? Also, there's an opinion in the Medrash that with Cain was born one girl as a twin, and with Hevel was born 2 girls. And it says that Cain and Hevel got into an argument because they married the girls. There was nobody else. And they married, that's Pshat Olam Chesed Yibana. One of the meanings of Chesed is incest. So Olam Chesed Yibana, the world was built that way. There was no other way for the world to be built. So they argued who should get the extra girl, and Cain killed Hevel over that extra girl. And therefore again, Cain was misaken that now as Yisro by giving Moshe, the Gilgal of Hevel, his daughter Tzipporah as a wife. So again there was a tikkun. I'll tell you even more than that. Now, you have to know, this you have to know. There's speculation how Cain killed Hevel. Now, of course, there's the famous Rashi, the bloods of your brother is crying for me from the ground. That, why does it say Demei in the plural? Because Cain never had the benefit of going to biology. He had no idea of the human anatomy, so he didn't know how to kill Hevel. So he kept on stabbing him until he hit a vital organ. So that's the Demei. So according to that, he stabbed him. But there's another explanation that it would be beyond Cain to actually raise a murderous blow against his flesh and blood, against his brother. That kind of patricide Cain wouldn't have been capable of. But Cain was an Ish Ha'adama. He was a man of the land, right? Hevel was a Rayei Tzayin, he was a shepherd. Cain knew the land. And he knew where quicksand was. And he led Hevel to quicksand, and Hevel sunk in the ground and died. And that's Pshat. He's crying to me from the ground. He sunk in the ground. And that's also what Pshat is that when Hashem asked Cain, Aye Hevel achicha, where is Hevel? So Cain said, Lo yadati, I don't know. So it sounded like a lie. He's lying to Hashem. No, he's not lying to Hashem. He said, I don't know. He's sunk in the ground. I don't know where he is now. I don't know. But you see again the tikkun over here. Because now Yisro, as the Gilgal of Cain, remember he had the Mate Moshe. He was the one that had the staff. What happened is Yaakov had the staff, he brought it down to Mitzrayim, and it was given over to Yosef. And when Yosef passed away, it was in the palace. Yisro saw it, and he took it. And it says he sunk it into the garden, and nobody could remove it. And he says whoever removes it, and that's where the whole fairy tale came, of removing the sword, Merlin's sword, that's where the whole fairy tale came from. But whoever could take out the staff would get his daughter Tzipporah. And Moshe Rabbeinu took the staff that was sunk in the ground. You see all the tikkunim over here? It's an amazing thing. And by the way, Rashi says in the beginning of the Parsha that Yisro had 7 names. One of the 7 names was Kani. Umibnei Kani. Don't you see Kani? Cain is embedded in Kani. That's because Yisro was a Gilgal of Cain. It all fits in. But now I'm going to talk to you about something else, which is, it's really an interesting thing. Vayetze Moshe likras chaisnai. Moshe Rabbeinu went out to greet his father-in-law. Vayishtachu, he bowed down. Vayishak lo, and he kissed him. Vayishalu ish l're'ehu l'shalom. Which Rashi tells us Moshe Rabbeinu bowed down to him, he kissed him, and they inquired a man to his fellow about each other's welfare. So here we have, let's get the timeline here. Moshe Rabbeinu goes down to Mitzrayim to save Klal Yisrael. Hashem says, go to Mitzrayim. He goes down with his 2 children and his wife. Aaron greets him. And Aaron says to him, you're heading into Nazi Germany. It's enough that we have Jews there. You're bringing your wife and children there? You have a mission to go into Berlin in the height of Nazi Germany. You don't bring your family with you. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, you're right. And he sent Tzipporah and Eliezer and Gershom back to Midian. Now, Moshe Rabbeinu now Yisro is bringing to the Anani HaKavod. It's a whole shaila how he got in there. You couldn't enter into the Anani HaKavod. So there's a famous medrash that Yisro shot an arrow into the Anani HaKavod. Most arrows were rebuffed by the Anani HaKavod, but this arrow, the Anu let through, and it had a note attached to it, Ani chaysencha Yisro ba'alecha. And Moshe Rabbeinu came out to greet his father-in-law. So it says, Vayetze Moshe likras chaisna, he came to greet his father-in-law, Vayishtachu, and he bowed down, Vayishak lo, he kissed him, Vayishalu Yisroel, Shalom, how are you? So our fine Mispalel, Reb Baruch Goldman, asked me, he didn't see his wife for so long, and so much went on. Why didn't he greet his wife? There's nothing about greeting his wife. Say hello. How are you? He's talking to his father. What about his wife? Ishtek and Gufay. What's going on over here? It's a big kasha. The Torah and our leaders are for us to emulate. Now, this question is all the more troubling because I'm going to tell you, it says, Gedoyle Shimusha Yosim Limuda, even greater than learning from someone is serving someone. I had the special privilege of serving Ramosha Feinstein, my Rebbe. In the summer, I brought him this food. I was always around in the bungalow. And I remember one time that the Alter Rebbetzin, the Alter Rebbetzin was in Eretz Yisroel for a few days. At that time, Rav Moshe was already in his 80s, and he was in the bungalow, and the Rebbetzin was coming back. And he kept on asking me, did I hear if the Rebbetzin came back yet? And I didn't grasp why he kept on asking me. The parking lot was down a hill and way off. And it was because Rav Moshe wanted that as soon as we got word that the car was coming, he wanted to walk down to be able to greet her at the parking lot. I still remember this. I mean, it was a long way off. And Rav Moshe was already old. The Rebbetzin could come up and you could greet her in the bungalow. No, he wanted to walk down and greet her at the parking lot. And therefore the question is, what's going on over here? Why doesn't it say that Moshe said hello to his wife? So there is a pshat in the Medrash that it says that Yisroel came back with Moshe Rabbeinu's wife Achar shilucheha, after he sent her away. So Rabbi Yeshua in the Mechilta says that shilucheha meant that he gave her a get. And this was simply the way of Klal Yisrael, that if a husband was going to a dangerous place, he didn't want a chance that his wife should become an aguna. So he gave her a get, that in case he goes missing, that his wife shouldn't remain an aguna. Now remember, he's going back. He was a condemned man in Mitzrayim. They tried to kill him. They tried to execute him. He's going back to Egypt. The Paro was still alive. He never died. It says, Yamas Melech Mitzrayim just means he got saras. So the same crazy king is there. He's going in danger. So he gave his wife a get. If you look at the Targum Yonis and Menazil, it says also over there in the Targum Yonis and Menazil that he divorced her. So if he divorced her, so then that explains why he didn't greet his wife. They weren't married now. They would remarry, but they weren't married now. But of course others learned that they were still married. Achish Luchev just means he sent her away. So then why doesn't it say? So the first thing is that Vayetze Moshe Likras Chosnoi. Moshe Likras Chosnoi is Rosh Tevis Lechem. Moshe is Mem, Likras is Lamed, Chosnoi is Ches, that spells Lechem. So many of the Mefarshim say that's just a sign that when you go to Greek guests, you should make sure to serve them bread. Right? That was the time on Moav. So when they went out to greet, they made sure that they were going to bring bread. However, I believe it's also to hint that he greeted Lechem. A wife is Lechem. Remember it says by Yosef, that Yosef had command of everything in the house of Potiphar except the Lechem that he eats. Lechem over there refers to a wife. So that's the first point, that he did greet his wife. Secondly, it says, Vayish'alu ish me'es re'ehu. Now, of course, this is a very well-quoted acronym. Vayish'alu ish l're'ehu l'shalom is Rosh Tevis Vav Aleph Lamed Lamed, which is, of course, spells Elul. Vayish'alu ish l're'ehu l'shalom is Elul, because that's what we do in Elul. We greet people. We make up with people. But of course, Vayish'alu ish l're'ehu. Who's the re'ehu? Who's the person's friend? Right? What does it say? Sameach t'samach re'yim ahuvim. Beloved friends. If your wife is not a friend, who's a friend? And if your wife is not a friend, then that's a problem. Got to become friends. Got to work on becoming friends. So, and the reason why it doesn't say it outright is probably because of tznius. Here it says, if Moshe Rabbeinu went out, and Aaron went, and the Zakanim went, who didn't go? It says all of Klal Yisrael went out to greet Yisro. It's in front of everybody. He's not making a big show. Right? So it was there, but it was muted. And that's why it's only hinted to. But of course it's there. You can't think for a second that he didn't go to greet his wife. But there's another question. See, if you look in Yeridea, in Siman Reish Mem Vav, it says, Chayev Adam b'kvoid chamav. A person is required to honor his father-in-law. Of course, in this week's Parsha, the fifth commandment is Kabedes avicha v'esimech. You have to honor your father and mother. So in the same siman of honor of your father and mother, it says Chayev Adam b'kvoid chamav. You have to honor your father-in-law. Now, if you look in the Yalkut says the raya is from Moshe Rabbeinu. Because what did he do with his shver, with his father-in-law? Vayishtachu vayishakloi. He bowed down and he kissed him. So you see that you have to honor a father-in-law. Yet, if you look in Shulchan Aruch, in Siman Reish Mem Vav, and you look at the Taz is one of the primary commentaries on Shulchan Aruch Yeridea. The Taz says that's not the source. The source is because David HaMelech referred to his father-in-law Shul. David married Shaul's daughter. He conquered, right, Goliath. So he married Shaul's daughter. And when he married Shaul's daughter, so he called Shaul, David called Shaul Avi. And because David called Shaul Avi, his father-in-law Avi, that's the source of the Taz. And also there's a major commentary on the page in Yeridea called the Be'er HaGoyla. It's the Be'er HaGoyla on the side, who says that that's the source to honor. Why don't you say the source is from Moshe Rabbeinu? The fact is, if you look at one of the most fascinating commentaries on Shulchan Aruch is the Gra. The Gra is very cryptic. He just gives sources. This Gemara, this Medrash. So on this halacha of Chayev Adam b'kvoid chamav, the Gra says the Yalkut of Yishtachu v'yishakloi. So he brings the raya from Yisroel. The Taz and the Be'er HaGoyla don't bring it from Yisroel. The truth of the matter is, it's very questionable how could you bring a proof from Yisroel. Because Yisroel came now, and it says that now he first converted. Medrash says, Vayichad Yisroel. One of the meaning is that he was overjoyed. But the Medrash says he took a sakin choda, a sharp knife, and he circumcised himself. If you look at the Targum Yonasan ben Uziel, the Targum of Yonasan ben Uziel, he says, Vayishalu ish me'es re'eyu. Now he became Re'eyu. Re'eyu, v'aftalu re'yak kamelka is Re'eyu b'mitzvahs. He just was Megayer. So he became Re'eyu right now. That's what the Targum Yonasan ben Uziel says. Gairei. The Chidush Yarim, Tzror Hamor, the Eitz Hadas Tov, they all say he was Megayer now. If he was Megayer now, so then when Tzipora married Moshe Rabbeinu, Tzipora was halachically not even his daughter. Because Gershon is Gayer Kekot and Shenoila Dami. There's no relationship. So then he's not a father-in-law. So what are you bringing a riot from him that you have to honor a father-in-law? It's not a father-in-law. They're each newborn babes. They're Megayer. They're like newborn babies. Gershon is Gayer. There's no... And I might add, according to Rabbi Yeshua and the Mechilta, he certainly wasn't a father-in-law because she was divorced. So what are you calling him a father-in-law? And I would say that that's why the Taz and the Ber Agayla bring a raya from David and Shul, and they didn't bring. But how does the Gaon learn? The Gra, the great Gra, believe me, whatever we know, the Gra knew. We're not outsmarting the Gra. Right? They say that Reb Chaim Volozhin's brother was a Gaon. So he said he was able to say Shas backwards too. But the Gaon was able to say Shas backwards the way he said it forwards. We're not talking about anything that we could think of the Gaon thought of. Anything. It must be that the Gaon learns that the honor to a father-in-law is from the basic Jewish decency of gratitude. And even if there isn't a halachic relationship between Yisro and Tzipora because they were Megayer, but the fact of the matter is that Yisro brought Tzipora into the world. And in the eloquent words of the Yalkut, it's so eloquent, in the eloquent words of the Yalkut, a wife makes a person a shalem. Until then he's only a half. That's the meaning of Ishta Kegufa. So beforehand you were a half and your wife completes you. And your completion came about because of your father-in-law. And therefore there's a chiyuv akar satayv. The fact that it's not a halachic from the bottom line is Yisroel's now a Jew. Yisroel's now a Jew, and it's because of him that you have your completion. It's very important to understand that that's the akar satayv. You were a half, you were only 50%, and because your father, and if you look in the commentary in your day, it says the same thing is true of a mother-in-law. You have a chiyuv to honor a mother-in-law just like a father-in-law. Because of these people, you are a whole. I told you, I mentioned this recently, but I still remember when Rav Tendler said a hesped, a eulogy on the passing of his wife, Rebbetzin Shifra. She was one of Ramesh's older daughters. When Rav Tendler spoke by his wife's funeral, Lo Yaleinu, he said, I stand before you now, more than half of me is dead. It's a way of saying she was the better half. He's saying, half of me is dead. It's an amputation. He's talking about this Yalkut. And I also had a Maisa with the Heilige Reb Shlomo Mebabov. I've said this in the past. Many, many years ago, after my daughter Yocheved was born, she was my baby, we went 4 years without having any more children. So I used to go on Sukkos. On my Ushpizin, I would go after my daf, around 11:30 in the night. I would go with like 25 people from my shir. We would go into the Bab of a Sukkah, and I would wish a good Yom Tov to the Heilige Reb Shlomo Mebabov. And that year I decided to ask him for a bracha for another child. So there in front of everybody, hundreds of people in the Sukkah, I went up to the dais, and I asked him for a bracha for another child, and he stunned me. He gave me a bracha for shleimus. But I had Yiras HaKavod. I wasn't going to say anything. I said, Amen. That year, my first Rebbetzin became sick with her first sickness. And Baruch Hashem, she had refuah shleima. She lived 16 more years. And I realized he was giving me a bracha of shleimus because without her, I would only be half. So I should be shaling. That's what it means. That's what it means to have a wife, that you're a shaling. And therefore, that's the fact that there's an honor to a shver. Whether there is a halachic relationship, the Mike says Yisro is a Jew now, and it's because of him that Moshe Rabbeinu has the shleimus of Tzipora, and therefore he gave him honor. Pasuk says that Moshe Rabbeinu told Yisro, "Es kol hatlo'a asher mitzosam baderech," all the hardships that they found on the road, "vayatzilem en Hashem," and Hashem saved them. So in a remarkable acronym, they say that Tlo'a stands for Tefillah L'Moshe Ish HaElokim. Tla, Taf Lamed Aleph Hey, stands for Tefillah L'Moshe Ish HaElokim. And that's why Vayatzilem Hashem. We have to know that prayer helps us avoid the pitfalls of life. The Tla Baderech, Vayatzilem Hashem, you want to know why they were saved? Because Tefillah L'Moshe Ish HaElokim. A person always has to pray. They get in the car. We get in the car, please Hashem, it should be safe. It just takes one drunk, Rahman al-Litzlan. It just takes one blowout. Tefillah L'Moshe Ish HaElokim. Person eats, they shouldn't choke. I'm not talking about being fearful. We daven. A person shouldn't get a tumor. We daven. Tefillah L'Moshe Ish HaElokim. Anoichi Hashem Elikecha. We start the Heilige Ten Commandments. Before we start talking about the Ten Commandments, I should give you the number to call if you want to sponsor a share, and that's 718-916-3100. That's you could text 718-916-3100, rmmwsi@aol.com. Anoichi Hashem Elikecha. Hashem says, I am Hashem your God. So there's a Medrash Pliya. The Medrash Pliya says that when Moshe Rabbeinu heard Anoichi Hashem Elikecha, he said, Baruch atah Hashem Elikeinu melech ha'olam shelo yasani gai. That you didn't make me a guy. So what does it have to do with Anoichi Hashem Elikecha? So the Bayis Neman says that he heard this pshat when he was 8 years old. He must have been some 8-year-old. Because it's a pretty deep shot for an 8-year-old. Moshe Rabbeinu had a prophetic vision that Klal Yisroel would get into trouble. Now, when Klal Yisroel sinned in the Chet HaEgel with the golden calf, Moshe Rabbeinu defended them and said, Hashem, you didn't say the Ten Commandments in the Lashon Rabbim. You didn't say Anoichi Hashem Elikeichem. You said Anoichi Hashem Elikecha. You were speaking to me. So therefore, don't destroy them. So remember what Hashem said. Hashem said to him, Herif mimeni, leave me. Vashmideim, I'll destroy them. Ve'esa ischa legoy gadol, I'll make you a great nation. I'll make from you a great nation. When Moshe Rabbeinu heard Anoichi Hashem Elikecha, oh Elikecha, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech ha'olam shelo yasani gai. You're not making me a goy gadol, because I have a good excuse for them. You said Elikecha, not Elikecha. It's such a goyness stick of shot. He said, Shalaya Sadi Guy, you're not going to make me a nation and destroy them because you said Alikacha. Of course, this is not the Pashup Shot. The Pashup Shot in this Medrash is what it says when Rav Elchanan Wasserman, the Kovet Shiurim, there isn't a yeshiva in the world that doesn't have the 2-volume set of Kovet Shiurim from Rav Elchanan Wasserman, the Heilige Baranovich Yeshiva, on their shelves. There isn't a yeshiva in the world. Rav Elchanan Wasserman, who went back to Europe, he was here in America collecting, he could have saved his life. He went back to Europe. So it says that when he stood by the gas chambers in Auschwitz, Hashem Yinkum Damai, from the Nazim Arurim, Yamach Shemam V'zichram U'deirayin Eilam. So they started dancing. Ashreinu Matayv Chalkeinu Umanoim Geraleinu. And a Nazi said, this is insane. Ashreinu? You're going to be ashes. What's Ashreinu? They said, you can't take away our God. You can't take away our God. Baruch atah Hashem Shaliyah Sani Goy. I got a God. You don't have a God. That's the Anoichi Hashem Alikecha Shaliyah Sani Goy. There are so many secrets embedded in the brachas that we make in the morning. I mean, so many secrets. You know, it's oozing out of me. I got to say it, even though this is not the place to say it. You know, we have a bracha. It's such a strange bracha that we say every morning. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, oizer Yisroel b'gvura. That you gird Yisroel with might. Now that's just strange bracha. You know, we don't say Yisroel by many of the brachas because they're not uniquely Jewish. We don't say Poikeach Ivrei Yisroel. We don't say Matir Isurei Yisroel because Hashem opens the eyes of every human being in the morning, returning them to the sight. Hashem helps people shake off the bonds of sleep. It doesn't say Layoif Yisraelim. He renews the strength of every human being. But by Oize Yisroel B'Gvura, we specify Yisroel. What do you mean? If anything, Gvura is a more Goyish attribute. What's Oize girding? It either means the scabbard which is on the belt that houses the sword, or the holster that's on the belt that keeps the gun. Women say Oizer Yisroel B'Gvura. Women don't wear a gun. We're not going to talk about the Pekuach Nefesh in Eretz Yisrael, but otherwise women don't. Women are not supposed to wear a gun. It's a malbush of an ish. Women don't wear. That's why women are part from Periya Berivia, because ish darkoi lichbosh vein isha darkoi lichbosha. It says v'kif shua. A woman, it's not her way to conquer. Why does it say Oizer Yisroel B'Gvura? It's such a strange bracha. The answer is we're not talking about that type of Gevura. We're not talking about Mike Tyson and Muhammad Ali. We're not talking about bulging biceps. Ezel Gibar HaKovesh is Yitzray. Ooh, conquering the Yetzer. Closing the eyes from that which is immodest. And by the way, that's not just a male thing. There's a misconception that women don't have a problem. Do you know that the organization Shmirei Seinayim told me that one of the 6 people that they have that call their hotline are women? Oizer Yisroel B'Gvura means that Hashem helps us in our fight against the Yetzer Hara. Because if Hashem doesn't help, we wouldn't be able to prevail. That's the bracha of Oizer Yisroel B'Gvura. That we thank Hashem for our help, that we're able to close our mouth and not divulge somebody's secret, or not gossip about something that we know about someone. Or that we could avoid immodesty. We could avoid scrolling down our phones, down Sodom V'Amorah Lane. We'll take the bracha of Shalei Sani Ovid. Of course, the simple meaning of Shalei Sani Ovid is that I don't have a boss that treats me like a slave. There are bosses that treat their employees like slaves. You want your job? Then don't even think about leaving. What do you mean? I'm working already 12 hours. I don't care. These orders got to get out. Or don't come tomorrow. That boss is a paro, and his worker is an eved. You don't have a boss like that, you could say the bracha Shalei Sani Oved. But you know, there were great people who had in mind, because remember, it's phonetic. They had in mind as if it was spelled Shalei Sani Aleph Beis Dalet. What's Oved with an Aleph? Shaloi Sani, it's an abbreviation of Bezdin, that I don't have to be an Av Bezdin. If I was an Av Bezdin, then I would be responsible if I make mistakes. If I paskin about Nidas and really she's tamei and I said she's permitted, or if I said she was forbidden and she's really permitted, who knows? I'm causing such shalom bayis problems. There are people that said Shalei Sani Aved, Shalei Sani Av Bezdin. Anyway, I got waylaid over here. Let's go back. Anoichi Hashem Alikecha asher tzitzicha me'eretz Mitzrayim. I am Hashem who took you out of Eretz Mitzrayim, Beis Avodim, from the house of bondage. So everybody here cites Rabbi Yehuda Halevi. The great Rabbi Yehuda Halevi asked the question, why does Hashem introduce us as I am Hashem who took you out of Egypt? Why doesn't he introduce himself as I am Hashem who created the world? It's a pretty big thing, creating the world. In Mitzrayim, Egypt, okay. I created the sun. I mean, it took you out of Egypt, but without the sun you would freeze. Without air you would asphyxiate. Want to introduce, it's a big meeting. Milik says the most memorable event in the history of mankind is Matan Torah. So, come on! Say I'm Hashem. It's a big introduction. I'm Hashem who created the world. That's Rabbi Yehuda Halevi's Kasha. Ibn Ezra brings it down from Rabbi Yehuda Halevi. Many people weigh in about this question. Probably the most direct answer to this question is that nobody saw the creation of the world. Yetzias Mitzrayim happened in front of a whole nation. That was seen. The miracles of the Makkis, the splitting of the Red Sea, which is, it's known by all people. That was witnessed by everybody. That's why Hashem introduced himself as I am Hashem who took you out of Egypt. That's one answer. But there's another basic answer. Because Hashem is saying, Anoichi Hashem Elikecha. I am your God. So therefore it doesn't say who created the world. If it's because you created the world, then it should be everybody's God. Oh, but I'm the one that took you out of Egypt. And I took you as my servants. I freed you from bondage, that you should be my servants. I'm your God. That's why it says, Asher Tzeichicha Me'eretz Mitzrayim. That's why the Satmar Rebbe, the late Satmar Rebbe, says that in Kiddush Friday night, we have to mention Yetzias Mitzrayim. Not just that Hashem created the world. Because we're saying why we have Shabbos and the guy doesn't have Shabbos. Goy Sheshavas Chayim Misa. Now, if it's because he created the world, then everybody should have Shabbos. But it's also Zeich L'Yetzias Mitzrayim. Zeich L'Yetzias Mitzrayim, that's a Jewish thing. Now, they say another pshat. And that is, Anoichi Hashem Elikecha. Hashem is Midas Harachamim, and Elikecha is Midas Hadin. In those days, almost all pagan belief there was a God of good and a God of evil. Same God that did good won't do evil. But Hashem said, no, I'm Hashem Elikecha. I'm Midas Harachamim and Midas Hadin. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. What's the proof? Asher hotzei sicha me'eretz Mitzrayim. I took you out of Mitzrayim, and I did the miracles for you and the punishments for Mitzrayim. So that's Anoichi Hashem Elokeinu. That you don't see from Bria Yisrael. That duality in Hashem you don't see from Bria Yisrael. Comes along the Yalkut Yehuda, and the Yalkut Yehuda says something else. The Yalkut Yehuda says that it says, Al Yisalel Chacham B'Chachmasai. Let a wise person not boast about wisdom. V'al Yisalo Giber B'Gvurasai. Let not a mighty person boast about his might, brag about his might. Ki im bezois yisalel ha-misalel. You wanna think you're big in something? Haskel v'yadoya oisi. Be intelligent and know me. Says the Yalkut Yehuda. The meaning of this is don't be big about wisdom, about might. Bigness is in good deeds. Therefore, Hashem doesn't introduce himself as the master builder of the world. He introduces himself as the one who saved the oppressed from oppressors. You want to know something big? You want to have accomplishments? It's in your kindness to others. That's why Hashem introduces himself as Anoichi Hashem Elikecha Asher Hotzei Me'eretz Mitzrayim. Yes, he was the master builder. And the truth of the matter is, we have to add, which takes a little bit of the punch of this pshat. Brias Ha'olam was the greatest act of chesed, Olam Chesed Yibana. But what the Yalkut Yehuda is saying is Hashem wanted to say, you want to feel big? Tell me how you saved other people, how you helped other people. I want you to know, I'm introducing myself to you. I took 600,000 people out from servitude, from oppression. That's bigness. What sick person did you visit recently? What kala did you help? Who did you comfort? Now, the Yalkut Yehuda, in his preface to the Ten Commandments, it's interesting, I told you this many times, that in my vast library, it's not so vast anymore, I still have 40 boxes that I didn't unpack yet from the basement, but it's still pretty vast upstairs. In every one of my svarim, by something that I said already, I have the date that I said it. I don't like to repeat, or at least I don't like to repeat what I say recently. So on this preface of the Yalkut Yehuda, it's written Tafshin Nun Hey. That's 29 years ago. So I said this, you'll excuse me, those of you that remember it from 29 years ago, you'll excuse me. I said this 29 years ago. Right, that's 29 years, Tafshin Nun Hey, right? Nun, Samech, Ayin, Pei. Right? 29 years ago. So, he says over from the Sefer HaIkrim. Sefer HaIkrim are, the basics of Yadus, the basics of Judaism. So he says, the Sefer HaIkrim says there's three basics of Judaism. One is Agudas Hashem, the uniqueness of Hashem. Like we say, Hashem Echad, nothing exists independent of Him. Ata mechayes kulam, you give everybody life. There's no reality except for you. The second is that Torah is min hashemayim. The Torah is from heaven. And the third is schar v'oinish, reward and punishment. That Hashem rewards good and punishes evil. He says those are the ikrim of Yadus. He says, and you all see that from the first commandment. He says, Anochi Hashem Elikecha, and lo yeh lechem Elohim acherim al panai. That's the Agudas of Hashem. I am Hashem. You shouldn't have anybody else besides me. That shows the oneness of God. Anochi Hashem Elikecha. Hashem says, I am the one that's telling you this. It's not Moshe Rabbeinu. It's I. Hashem is talking from Shemayim with Oshin and smoke. That's Torah min Shemayim. And I might add, he doesn't say this, but I might add that the Gemara tells us that Anoichi, this is a Gemara, Anoichi is an acronym for Ona Nafshi Kesivis Yohabas. It's a Gemara. The Gemara says, Anoichi, Ona Nafshi, my essence, says the Rabbi Nisham, Kesivis, I wrote it in the Torah, and Yohavas, and I gave it to you. The Torah contains Nefesh of Hashem. Anoichi is Ona Nafshi Ksivis Yohavas. And by the way, that's the idea that Kutsha Barichu V'Raisa Chadhu. Hashem and the Torah is one. That's the idea. The Gemara says in Masechtas Brachos, if you walk out of a Sefer Torah when it's open, it refers to you, Oizvei Hashem Yichlu. If you forsake Hashem, you'll be destroyed. You didn't forsake Hashem, you forsook an open Torah. No, that's Hashem. The Torah Hashem is one. And that gives beauty to the meaning of the pasuk. Everybody talks about dveikis, to be attached to Hashem. That's the meaning of Atem adveikim b'Hashem Elokeichem chayim kulchem hayom. Now, how can you be davik in Hashem? The Gemara says, Aloi Hashem eish oichlu. Hashem is a consuming fire. You can't get close to Hashem. Whoever came close to the mountain was died. No, you get close to the Torah. That's why it says about Torah, matzah is Torah. The Gemara says matzah means Torah, right? It says ki chayim heim l'motzeihem. So pasuk says ki motzai matzah chayim. You find me, you find life. Where do we find Hashem? We find Hashem in the Torah. By the way, this gives meaning. I'm speaking to myself also. I I don't do this enough. This is the idea. On Shabbos, you go and you kiss the Torah. It's a way of kissing Hashem. Because Kutsha Berichu V'Raisa Chadu. That's Ona Nafshi Ksivas Yehovas. That's Torah Min HaShamayim. And the 30 curse, Schar V'Einish, well, that we see clearly. I took you out of Egypt because you went ahead and risked your lives and killed the Egyptian god. And you circumcised yourself even though you were old. So I rewarded you with the miracles of Yetzias Mitzrayim and Kriyas Yamsuf. And the Mitzrim, they tortured you. They drowned your babies. They put them in the walls of Pitam and Ramses. Paro slaughtered 150 babies in the morning, 150 babies in the night for his saras. I gave them a makas. I killed their firstborns. That's Schar V'Einish. Wow, 56 minutes. My goodness. My goodness. I'm going to tell you now, because I feel guilty, to learn Parshas Yisro and not speak enough about the Ten Commandments. So you should stay tuned for tomorrow for the next segment called For the Shabbos Table, where I'm going to speak a lot more about the Ten Commandments. But I'm going to tell you one more shot for the evening, and we won't forget to do the Mishnah Yomis Be'ezus Hashem. What is it? Vayoshev Moshe? Vayeshev Moshe? Vayoshev, that's what I thought. Vayoshev Moshe lishpay des ha'am. It's Vayeshev? It's Vayeshev? Vayeshev Moshe lishpay des ha'am min ha'boker ad ha'orev. So Yisro said, it's no good. Lo tov hadavar. Novel Tebow, you're going to get worn out. You're judging the people from morning till night. The question is, why was Moshe Rabbeinu so busy judging people? There was a shaila of Hasagas Gevul. Two people wanted to open up a pizza shop on the same block. They were arguing about who inherits the camera store on Delancey. There were no businesses in the Midbar. There were no pizza shops. Everybody ate the mun. Nobody went to work. What were they arguing about? What was Moshe Rabbeinu so busy about? So the first place I saw this kasha asked was in the Rishon. Those that know I have a fondness for this sefer, the Paneach Raza. The Paneach Raza asks the kasha. And the Paneach Raza says they were arguing over the Bizas Hayam. They came out of the Yam Suf, and it says that the booty at the Yam Suf was greater than the booty from Egypt. And there was a mad rush, and the people that were closest chapped the orb of Paro and the crown, and this one took this noble's, jewelry, and other people were saying it's not fair, and he snatched it, and I looked at it first, and I touched it first, and I was Magviyah at first. And they were arguing all about the booty at the sea. And they were on top of Moshe from the morning till the night. That's the way the Paneach Raza learns. Which contains many lessons. They all had 70 donkeys of wealth that they brought out from Egypt. That's what it says. Each one came out with 70 chamayim. They had nothing to do with the money. There was no Macy's. They couldn't even order anything on the internet. was nothing to do with the money. And yet they're arguing from morning to night for more money. That's the poison of money. Oyev kesef lo yizbakes. They would never get to use the money except to donate it to the Mishkan. Except for that, they would die with all their money. They never got out of the desert, that generation. And yet they're arguing about more money. And it caused them arguments. Ma b'nechosim, ma b'daiga. And there's something else. It's really scary. What caused them? This money cost them something. It says, "Vayasav Moshe." Moshe Rabbeinu was pulling the people away from the Yamsuf. You know, it says that Moshe Rabbeinu became wealthy mipsilus haluchas, from the residue of the luchas, because when he broke the first luchas, so he had to carve out the second luchas, and the second luchas was made out of solid sapphire, and he kept the residue. That's how he became wealthy. So Maharsha says the chiddush is that he didn't take tuition, because if he took tuition, he'd be a very wealthy man. Taught all of God. He didn't take tuition. But I always wanted to learn, okay, we know that he didn't get the booty in Egypt because he was busy with the Atzmas Yosef, the bones of Yosef. But why didn't he get from the booty of the Yam? He crossed the Yam. He should get first pick. He caused us to be rescued. The answer is Moshe Rabbeinu said, we have a date with the Rabbeinu Shalom. We're supposed to be by Har Sinai. You have a date with the king, you don't sit around and collect baubles. You try to get people away from the Yamsuf. He couldn't pull them away. That's the magnetism of money. You can't pull people away from money to learn. Even though they have enough money. You ask, why do you need more money? Look, I'm doing it for a nest egg. You have a nest egg. How about a bigger nest egg? For my kids. You have for your kids. You have for my kids' kids. Can't pull people away from money. It's a scary thing. That's the way the Paneach Raza learns. In the biography of the Chavetz Chaim, wow, 102. Going overtime. Before I do, I want to mention our sponsors, Mark Frankel, my good dear friend Mark Frankel and his family, in honor of the share and appreciation of the DAF. If you want to join our family of DAF Zoomers, it's every night of the week at 8. You go on Zoom to zoomdaf.com and I'll let you in and you'll be part of the family. On Motzei Shabbos, 2 blot at 7:45. Oh, this Motzei Shabbos is at 8 already. At 8. So it's throughout the 6 days a week at 8 o'clock, zoomdaf.com, by the Klein and Jaffe families, Lila Nishmas Osher Anshel Ben Yehuda, and by Berch Goldwasser and family, Lila Nishmas Moshe Ben Gershon HaKoyen. If you would like to sponsor, 718-916-3100, rmmwsi@aol.com. In the biography, in the authoritative biography of the Chavetz Chaim, in a footnote in the biography, it cites the Chavetz Chaim as saying that what they came to Moshe Rabbeinu about was they were arguing about shidduchim. Because in the desert, there was a law of loisosav nachala. You weren't allowed to marry outside of your shevet. So that restricted the shidduchim pool. And everybody was arguing about shidduchim. And to me it was enlightening that all the way back in the beginning of our young nationhood, we already were grappling over shidduchim. Today it is one of our most serious concerns, especially families that don't have the wherewithal either to buy half a dira or to give the requisite support. They have many daughters, and they're not getting shidduchim. And anybody that has the ability to network and help people, ashreichem u'ma tov chelkeichem. Thinking about this question this year, about what they could have been talking with Moshe Rabbeinu, I thought that it might be about the complexities of Hilchos Shchenim, of how to live with your neighbors. One thing about Klal Yisrael at that time was 600,000 people lived in a dense population in the relatively small environment of the clouds of glory. 600,000 people living on top of each other. And they're cooking, and they're grinding, and they're singing, and there's all kinds of neighborly skirmishes. And perhaps that's what Moshe Rabbeinu was busy with. You know, Hilchos Shchenim, we'll learn about it in the second parak of Baba Basra, Yetz Hashem. Hilchos Shchenim is very complex. And that could also be what Moshe Rabbeinu was busy with. We want to thank you all very much for joining us. Wish you a good night and a good Shabbos. And stay tuned for the Mishnah Yomis.